Africa is our hashtag. The phone numbers will be on your screen, and we speak to two people who have very interesting insights with respect to that. One of them, to my immediate right, is Abdulaziz Farah. He's a member of parliament for Mandera East. Arabia is right in your constituency, about 50 kilometers away from Mandera town, so you know the area pretty well. Thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you,
of course, a seasoned person on KTN Prime. We've got Andrew Franklin, security analyst, former Marine, been in the country for about 31 years and likes to follow these with lots of newspaper clippings about the attacks that have taken place in Mandera and in parts of the north.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, great to have you. I'll start with you, Abdulaziz. This isn't a first attack. You can see the figure on our video wall. 147 people dead. That includes a number of people in the 3 counties of the north, the counties that have borne the greatest burden with respect to attacks from the Al-Shabaab. Is this a pattern? What do you think when you look at the attack today with respect to all the others?
Thank you, Alan. I think this has been a pattern from the past several years, which has been escalating as time goes by. Let me pick from the recent ones. Since I was elected as the member of parliament for Mandera East, the incidences that were happening were virtually happening probably every week, if not every day or every month.
Why do you think this hasn't been played up?
It has been played up, I mean, because I think the one of today has been hyped up a lot because of the magnitude,
numbers, but in terms of frequency, if you're saying that there are attacks that would happen every week or every day, why isn't this part of the national conversation, do you think?
Really, I really don't know, but it is in the public domain, it is in the news. I mean, it is being reported every time. When you look at the number of IEDs that are exploding in that county, they are consistent. When you look at the number of government installations that are being destroyed by these criminals, it's shocking.
Yeah.
When you look at the number of people who are shot point blank, including government officers, chiefs, elders, people who are perceived to be probably enemies, or any other person, the numbers are shocking. I mean, the last 2-3 years, 2 chiefs were shot dead.
Yeah.
One being the recent one. The IEDs that were exploding, the most daring one went for the governor. You can remember?
Yes.
So the number of carjackings that happened and the casualties that followed, many. So when you look at again how these issues are happening, they look to be coordinated.
Yeah.
When you look at in Mandera, people, the criminals targeting the Kenya Power and Lighting genset or the plant.
And other government installations.
And other government installations.
Yeah.
It tells you something. When the first target of the Kenya Power and Lighting happened in Mandera, simultaneously it happened in Wajir.
What is it telling us, other than the simultaneous nature of the attacks? What do you think, as a member of parliament there, is it telling you with respect to those attacks?
It tells me there are some kind of people somewhere who are pursuing a certain objective. Really, what this objective is, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it looks to be coordinated. It looks to be having an objective. And they have targets. They look to be organized. You know, when you see a team in Wajir targeting the Kenya Power and Lighting genset, and at the same time another one doing it. Now we are told 2 days ago they targeted the Kenya Power and Lighting genset in Wajir, and rumors was milling around in Mandera at a place called Korome that some people were found around asking for the direction or where the Kenya Power Lighting engine is in Mandera.
Yeah.
So that tells you they are again doing it simultaneously.
And trying to carry out coordinated attacks.
Yeah,
One more question.
attacks, yes.
With respect to the attack today, you can tell that it was very targeted. In fact, the leaders that spoke out from the 3 counties said it was very targeted. People were specifically picked out and shot mostly because of their faith. With respect to the number of people who died prior to today's attack, would this trend still hold?
Yes. When you look at the trend, the other most serious one was the one when a Mira vehicle was carjacked, and then the KPR and the Kenya police who were pursuing that vehicle were killed and burnt, alive. Mm-hmm. That was the most horrifying one before this one.
All right, let me pick up there with you, Andrew. What are we looking at in terms of the trends that we're seeing in the 3 counties of the north? Are we seeing flash in of course, it's not flash in the pan attacks. We have already established that there's a trend. What are we looking at in terms of the people who are perpetrating this?
Well, we're looking at insurgency. We're looking at an insurgency spreading across the 3 counties of Northeast Province and also into Lamu County as well. These are not individuals. These are actually these are squads, 10-man, 12-man squads who cross the border into our country and attack planned targets. The bus attack this morning, that bus originated in Somalia. And it crossed the border. It was no doubt tracked by al-Shabaab until it crossed the border, until it collected sufficient people on board to make it worth ambushing and killing Christians. Christians who, by the way, reside in that part of Kenya because they are assigned to be there by the government of Kenya.
The Al-Shabaab took responsibility for the attack earlier in the day, saying that it was vengeance for the closure of the mosques and the raids that took place. But speaking to the wider trend of this, it doesn't seem very different than what has been happening in the past 2 or 3 years.
Well, it's very similar to what happened in Mpeketoni. The governors are correct in that Al-Shabaab is trying, seemingly successfully, to divorce the foreign population, the Christian population from these counties and from Lamu County, the non-indigenous or the non-locals, from the original inhabitants. The pattern of attacks since October 2011 has been against assistant chiefs, against police. The church raids on July 1st in 2012, those were churches inside police compounds. The idea is to divorce the locals, the original inhabitants, if you will, of Northeast Province from the central government and from the authorities. And this is actually being seen as very effective. As early as October of 2012, there were reports that government of Kenya civil servants were not reporting to clinics, were not reporting back to their duty stations. In fact, at the time, in October 2012, when it looked like there was a need for another census to be taken before the elections that were supposed to happen in December 2012, I asked the question of then Minister for Planning, how do you run a census in a war zone? So in October of 2012...
Especially in a place that's understaffed, with respect to people not going back to their places of work, Andrew. Very interesting point that you raise. We've got Adan on phone from Mandera. We'll continue with this conversation. We've got Adan on phone from Mandera. Adan, if you can hear us, what's your question or comment to the members of the panel? What is your comment with respect to this violence? I'm sorry, Adan, you'll have to turn down the volume on your television.
National intelligence. The national intelligence who are here in Mandera are not.
I'm sorry, Adan, that line isn't very clear. Please try and call back. Of course, you watching at home, you can also call in and make your contributions. From the little that we heard about what Adan was trying to say, he was making a dig at the intelligence services. Before I get back to you, Andrew, do you think, especially with respect to what the governor, Ali Roba, said, that intelligence is being taken seriously by the people on the ground?
Alan, of First of all, before I come to that point, let me exhaust the other one of the trends, of the pattern. It seems Al-Shabaab or whoever these people are have taken a new trend. I think they have failed to probably pressure us on things maybe to do with economics or to do with politics or the other attacks. It seems it's a new front where they want to create a scenario where Kenyans are fighting against each other in terms of religion. But this is not religion. When you look at the deaths of Muslims in Mombasa County, in Kwale County, in Mandera County, in Garissa, in Wajir, all over in Nairobi, a very good point is the case of the member of parliament for Kamukunji. He's a Muslim. So it's not about Muslims or killing Christians, and I think this should be clear to the people of Kenya. It is something that is really not religion or not Christian or no Muslim. It's something peculiar, and now they are creating a scenario where Kenyans are going to fight in the line of religion.
Mheshimiwa,
now coming to the security issue.
Before you get there, let me just split hairs with you for a moment. As you started that statement, you said Al-Shabaab or whoever they are. Why the uncertainty about who perpetrates these attacks in that region?
Good question. Most of the cases, they don't own up. But some of the cases, they own up. So sometimes they say they are behind this case, like the one of today. They rush to the internet. So they say they are behind it.
There's been concern that there are a number of leaders in Mandera, as political leaders especially, who have been afraid about speaking directly against the Al-Shabaab, especially while they're in Mandera. Is this true?
No, it's not true.
Have you spoken out against them?
I did speak. I did speak, and a case in point is the one where the soldiers were burnt. So we do speak. The reason that I ask this is because the fear apparently is based on the fact that the Al-Shabaab are so closely integrated with the community there, and that's something that, Andrew, you were speaking about with respect to it being an insurgency. Would you require the buy-in of the local population for an insurgency like this, as you've described it, to be successful?
You'd have to have some active cooperation, but you also have to have an acquiescent population. Most people want to be left alone, but most insurgencies instill fear in the civilian population, which the government forces have to somehow overcome that fear. My understanding of the situation after 33 years in Kenya is that we tend to try to instill, the central government tends to come down real hard to instill fear in civilian populations to prevent them from cooperating. But to prevent civilians who are alone at night from cooperating or keeping their mouths shut as Al-Shabaab is moving through their homesteads and through their areas, which is what Al-Shabaab is doing. Al-Shabaab took responsibility for this bus attack, make no mistake about it. The fact that they claimed that it was in retaliation for what's happened in Mombasa, well, what else would they do? Why not just jump on that particular bandwagon and further sow confusion, which they seem to have done from what we're hearing from the government side, as far as people inciting religious hatred. The fact that I would suggest that many of the people who were killed on the bus were Kenyans.
People from down Kenya.
Okay, down Kenya. Who were apparently at least one police officer and other civil servants going on Christmas leave. They could be Buddhists and they would have been killed. They could also be Muslims.
All right.
If they work for the government of Kenya, because what's happening in the 3 counties in Northeast Province, and of course now in Lamu and Tana River, is the division of the inhabitants who have to live there from the central government, where the people go home at night to their comfortable homes in Nairobi.
Interesting. Let's pick up with another conversation from the, or rather another call from the ground. We've got Abdullahi calling in from Mandera. Abdullahi, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you, John. How are you? Good evening. How are you doing?
I'm fine. Can you give us your question or comment with respect to the massacre that took place?
I'm fine. Let me start with my condolences to the British family.
Yes. What is your question or comment?
Okay, my comment is actually, I think we're not doing what is supposed to be done. We always keep talking on security matters. What can happen? The Keton happen. And I think like the CS for Imperial Complex is still talking the way he was talking during the Westgate.
All right, Abdullah, I have a question for you. Do you think that, based on the fact that you live in Mandara yourself, do you think that if you had intelligence that you could offer up to the government, that you would actively look for someone in government to give it to them?
Hello? Pardon,
If you had intelligence that about the Al-Shabaab, would you feel comfortable or safe giving it to the government?
I don't think I'll feel safe, Alan, because in case you give out information, the same government which was supposed to safeguard you will still actually haunt you actually. So that's why sometimes you feel giving out information, but you feel like you're not secured yourself. So how can you give out when you're secured yourself for information? You will be targeted.
All right, Abdullah, thank you very much. We'll leave it there. Remember, if you can call in and give your question or comment very quickly to give more people room to be able to do so. Let's return to our conversation. Mweshimiwa, he makes a very interesting point about the comfort, or the level of comfort between the government and the people on the ground in terms of sharing intelligence. What's the solution? Because this has been happening for a number of years now.
And I think it is very paramount that the people, the shoe wearer, the people on the ground and the government security apparatus must work together if we need to kind of work on this insecurity issues.
But as Andrew mentioned, how can that happen if a majority of the expeditions or the exercises carried out by the government are punitive to the local population?
Correct, he is right. And that's why people inhibit information. What happens is that more often than not, when incidents like the one of today happen, the forces come to the area and start beating up everybody they find on site, and that makes people, reserved. They don't want to, associate with the soldiers. And so we need to create that picture, that scenario where Kenyans are very comfortable with the security apparatus or the police or the military, so that they feel very comfortable to give information. Sometimes somebody gives information and he's victimized himself. So there are several cases where people have been victimized for giving information. I mean, it is very weird for soldiers to jump on people in a center who themselves are victims, living in trauma, living in fear. They don't sleep in their houses in the night, like that place where the incident happened, the Omar-Jilo area. They move out of their houses and they hide themselves in the bushes so that they are not targeted. So the people find themselves in between a rock and a hard place.
How about complicity of the local leaders there in perhaps not speaking out as strongly about Al-Shabaab, or perhaps, as has been alleged in various quarters, supporting them?
I think we spoke about it very hard, severally. Our governor is a good example, and he has constantly condemned. We also condemned. We made several press statements in Parliament and others at the ground. So I think condemnation, I mean, we've done it.
All right. Andrew, what do you think the solutions are in trying to find peace, in searching for peace and security in those three counties, plus, of course, Lamu as well as Tana River County?
I think first of all we have to question whether the National Police Service has the capacity to act on intelligence provided by the National Intelligence Service.
What is actionable intelligence? Actually, we should mention that because the governor said that he had talked about very clear threats. You said that as well. What is actionable intelligence? The police there say that it was said on a political podium and therefore it has to be said through the right channels. What is actionable?
Actionable intelligence that comes from the National Intelligence Service to the police about trends, about potential locations, as with Mpeketoni, as the Independent Policing Oversight Authority pointed out in their heavily redacted report released on September 19th about Mpeketoni, that NIS communication logs, documents, showed, they said there will be attacks on Mpeketoni roughly around this period of time. Yep. The National Police Service was completely unable to respond to that sort of information or intelligence because we do not have a National Police Service in accordance with the legislation that was enacted by the 10th Parliament in 2011. Why do we have 500 heavily armed General Service Unit officers and Administration Police Unit officers closing down 4 mosques in Mombasa? 500 uniformed personnel carrying firearms, highly trained in almost all cases, are in Mombasa with making sure that 4 mosques remain closed. Now, yes, it is true, and I think we need to talk about this, that yes, there were grenades found in some of these mosques. A pistol was found. 5 days later, we still do not know the source of those grenades. We don't know the source of that pistol with a star on its handguard.
So are we talking about the lack of intelligence-led
The lack of intelligence is also because, as we've seen in the last 2 years in particular, many assistant chiefs in Mandera, Wajir, Garissa have been castigated for resigning because they're simply not safe in their compounds. We cannot guard every assistant chief, and to expect people to stay out there in the bush to give information to if they're KPR, whoever's left up there carrying 50-year-old rifles, to expect them to somehow remain loyal and steadfast against what are, in fact, organized soldiers, troops from Somalia. Al-Shabaab is acting when they cross the border and attack a bus, as they did this morning, whether it was 10 or 20 or up to 30, they may have been in camps inside Kenya for several days waiting for a
all right.
Somalia, crossed the border,
and
then was attacked inside our border.
Okay, Abdulaziz, let's wind up with you. What do you think the solution is, especially with respect to what Andrew has just been talking about, but more than just what's happening now, or more than just the attack that took place today? Are we as a nation addressing the underlying reasons for terror in the north, but mostly, but also countrywide?
John, thank you. I don't think so. There must be a problem. There must be a problem in that information information dissemination. There must be a problem somewhere. There must be a breakdown. There must be something between who cooks information or intelligence and who serves the information.
Yes.
Somewhere something went wrong. I don't know where the rain started beating us, but I think...
So how do we address it very quickly?
So we have a problem, and we really, as a country, we must sit down and find where the problem is. Look, Alan, we sent our KDF to Somalia. Inside Somalia in Kismayu, right?
As well as in the Gedo region, which borders your constituency.
Yes.
But what is the solution that we need to find?
Now, when we were sending the KDF first, Gedo was a later on assignment, but they went straight to Kismayu. When we were sending, did we ever sit down and talk about the strategy that we should put in place to make sure we safeguard 1,000 or plus kilometers of border? What were the strategies put in place? So we have a lot of things that we have not done that needs to be done so that our borders are safe. All right,
I think we're going to have to leave it there. Abdulaziz Farah, Member of Parliament for Mandera, thank you very much for joining us. Of course, Andrew Franklin, thank you once again for joining us to discuss this very important issue. We will keep this right on our agenda with respect to what happened in Mandera and what's going on in the country with regard to terror attacks. But let's take a bit of feedback right now from you on our hashtag Mandera Massacre. Gashara Benjamin says, let's face it, even after what kind of terrorist attack, nothing major will happen because this is Kenya. Very unfortunate comment, but one that is shared, I'm sure, by a number of people. Elias Dennis says, I think it's time As people, we unite and rise up against the terrorists who are killing us without mercy. That also is something that a number of people are sharing. We've got quite a bit of feedback that's coming in. Ekuru Court says, if we can't arrest confessed killers in Kapedo, how can we arrest ghost killers in Mandera? Stop taking Kenyans for a ride. Lots of anger coming out of the comments on Mandera, and of course in the wake of Kapedo and a lot of other security challenges that we've been facing. But of course here on KTN, every conversation has a point, and every conversation, especially that we have on the weekends, is, so what is that point? Let's just get into that right now. Like we mentioned, there is a point of the discussions that we have here on KTN Weekend Prime, the point of news. And with respect to the attack that happened in Mandera, the first point that I'm going to talk about is on intelligence-led policing. Now, it's very surprising that a governor of the stature of Governor Ali Roba would come out and say that 2 weeks or a week before the attack that took place today, he had given information about impending attacks that the county commander there said was not given through the proper channels. Intelligence must be given to whoever it is that needs it at the right time, and it should be taken seriously by our intelligence services as well as by the police in order to effect action and mitigate the effects of an attack like this, or at least stop the planning of attacks in a region, especially a region as restive as Mandera. Secondly, something that we discussed at length in this past interview is reading of terror trends. That Mandera, Wajir, Garissa, as well as Lamu now and Tana River are being drawn into something of a pattern in terms of attacks on power installations, on government institutions, as well as government personnel in those regions, reads something very different than what was characterized today by the Al-Shabaab as being a revenge attack. These are trends that can be read from, and the data being used to analyze what needs to be done next with respect to counties that are at the border with Somalia. And finally, the reasons behind these attacks. What are the real reasons behind the attacks that we are seeing taking place in Mandera, in Wajir, in Garissa, in different parts of the country? Are we as a country being honest in terms of the discussion around the reasons underneath the terror threats, the radicalization that we're seeing throughout our country? Are we in the space to be able to have a discussion about, or rather to have a forum where we can have a discussion about that? If we are not, then we will need to move into that space, and that is a point. Now on to less troubling news, thankfully. Meet 33-year-old Esther Wanjiku, who has risen above disability, and despite not being able to walk, talk, or use her hands, she makes detergent to sustain herself and her family.
33-year-old Esther Wanjiku cannot talk, walk, or even use her hands, but all that has not held her back. She uses her legs to do most things, from washing clothes to writing, which she can do better than most people. A quick look at a certificate she got from Mary Magdalene Special School confirms to us that Esther is indeed a star that refuses to stop shining. It is this detergent that she makes that has been the main source of income to her family for the past 8 years, and even helped build the house that she now lives in with her parents. Esther has employed her mother in her detergent business to help her do what she's unable to.
Anatengeneza na mimi nachukua, ninapeleka, nikiitishwa baka dika, nikikwa shule ninapeleka. Kwa maana kubeba hawezi kubeba.
The story of Esther Wanjiku would be incomplete without her mother, Margaret Ndenya. It would have been easy for her to give up with bitterness on life, or just choose to be angry with God when she realized that her fourth-born daughter was not like every other child.
Nikaona sasa huyu mtoto aedi tunakaa tu naye nyumbani. Kukaa kwake kwa chini alikaa kama kona miaka 5. Ndiye alikaa chini. Sasa kukaa chini haamuki. Haya ninamuacha. Sasa tu ni kuzunguka naye na ni mtu mkubwa.
But to her, it was the beginning of a journey of making sure that her child had the best care in the world.
Ule father alikuwa naye, anaitwa Father Michael. Aliona huyu mtoto kazi yake anafanya na mguu yote. Hata kuandika, akiambia andike, anaandika na mguu. Sasa hiyo alikuwa na miaka 10. Ndio wakaendana naye, wakampeleka hospitali, wakapeleka yeye huko Dogoto. Ndio wale wa Dogoto daktari aliambia yeye andike, akaandika na mguu. Sasa daktari alisema huyu mtoto asiguswe hata kidogo. Kusinjwa hata atengenezwe.
Margaret paid more attention to Esther, and it was then that she saw the determination in her daughter.
Kukura, tukaona nashika kijiko na mguu yake. Kidole hii mkubwa na hii ingine anaweka kijiko hapo. Sasa hiyo alikuwa hapana mkubwa sana, alikuwa anapeleka mpaka kwa mdomo.
She has a message to other mothers of children with special needs.
Nasikia baya sana nikiona watu wanaweka watoto kwa street ate wapeo pesa. Na tena ukiangalia mama yao mtoto akona nguvu ya kuenda pahali na apea hiyo mtoto yake vitu yote. Kwa maana Mungu akipea hiyo mtoto, aliona wewe utaweza kufanyia hiyo mtoto kazi. Usifanye ati ni biashara hiyo mtoto na muweka kwa barabara. Ate watu wakifita wewe unapea vitu kile mnapea, kwa maana huyo mtoto ndio mnaenda kukula. Kuonesana mtoto yako ati hiyo ni biashara.
The story of Esther Wanjiku is one of strong will overpowering physical limitations.
Quite an inspirational story there, but don't go away. We've got sports news coming up right after the break. Moses Wahisi has all the details from the Premiership and other sports that took place this weekend. Stay with us.
Sports in association.
An action-packed and sports day it has been. A very good evening and welcome to today's edition of KTN Sports. My name is Moses Wahisi. Now, starting us off, the presence of acclaimed striker Henry Motego in the Tusker FC and Harambee Stars lineups in the 1990s used to send shivers down the spines of the opposing teams. He was part of an elite class of footballers that were the backbone of the Kenya's glorious days. But if you were to meet Motego now, it would be sadly to know that nothing reflects his past successes in the field, both here in Kenya and also abroad. Take a look. First rewind to the 1990s when Henry Motego was an integral member of the then Kenya Breweries football team. His footballing techniques, pace and power earned him the nickname Ndovu. This is after he tore nets with his numerous goals he scored in his prime time. That feat of success earned him an unchallenged entry into the national team Harambee Stars. Born in Guja, his first stint in football was with Shabana FC, which he engineered its promotion to the Premier League in 1988. He later joined Kenya Breweries, now Tusker FC, then Al Arabi Club in Oman, before returning to Kenya Breweries. But the Motego of yesteryears cannot be compared to the present-day Motego. We caught up with him at a construction site in Kasarani, and this sums up the struggle that many past stars are going through. As he exits out living here, he can't help but reminisce the successes he registered with Tusker FC.
Nakumbuka wakati wa tulicheza na Mbiringa ya Gabon. Wakati nilifungwa mabao 3, mvua ilikuwa imenyesha sana. Hiyo ndio game siwezi sahau maisha yangu. Wakati nilifunga mabao 3.
Motego retired in the year 2000 and he tried his hand in coaching, first taking an assistant coaching role at Tusker under Jacob Ghost Mulee and later taking on the lead role. A status he has relegated to history, since what matters for him now is his immediate survival.
Nafikiri golden handshake nipewa na Kenya Breweries ndio nisaidia ngakuwa na kitu hapa Kasarani. Kanunua plot ngachenga. Nyumbani pia ile nyumba nilikuwa nayo nga construct nyumba nyingine. Pia hizo ndio nitakumbuka very well, siku waste pesa yoyote hata a single shilling.
Motego, just like those who came before and after him, suffers the indignity of a failed system that has no place for former stars. After retiring from employment in the year 2006, one could have imagined that he had saved enough money to help him move on with meaningful life. Life that took a turn for the worst, and he was forced to make hard choices such as these. A route he never envisaged.
Ile construction inafanya ndio inanipatia kila kitu, chakula, nini, mavazi na familia yangu wanaenda skuli. Kwa hivyo construction sio mbaya, kazi ni kazi. Kwa sababu hiyo ndio inanisaidia of late. Uwezi ukaangalia ya kitambo imepita hiyo. Maji ikimwaika yasuriki tena.
More disappointing was an appointment to manage the Gusii Stadium, an appointment that never was.
Yenyewe uwezi sikia vizuri kwa sababu ile ni cheo kubwa. Alafu ikasemekana mimi ni mtoto mdogo, siwezi pewa cheo kama hiyo. Siasa, unajua siasa sio vizuri. So ngadecide mimi mwenyewe nikawaachia, katoka ngarudi Nairobi.
That forced him to make an about turn.
Wakati nicho in construction, kuna nchini ya rafiki yangu alikuwa anaitwa Ronald Nyaoga. Huyu ndio tunatoka naye nyumbani. Akaniambia sasa, kama una kazi ya kufanya utakuwa unajoin kampuni yangu ya construction polepole, nikufundisha polepole. Hili ndio hicho mambo ya construction. Yenyewe nilikuwa sina kazi. Sasa ndio kumjoin kidogo sasa ndio ngakuja ngajua mambo ya construction.
Over the years, successive governments in Kenya have bothered least to recognize and reward former stars.
Na request Minister for Sports na FKF waite former international team wakae chini, waitane mkutano wakae chini, wajue shida iko wapi, tuwaambie the truth, mahali tunaona shida. Sisi tunajua shida iko wapi, sijui FKF ama Minister for Sports anaona hiyo kitu.
Being the first Kenyan to play in the Oman League, Motoko believes the footballing scene has changed and that young footballers need to take up financial management courses to avoid running into poverty after retirement.
It's so sad to see such a state of affair to some of the former Kenyan soccer heroes. But now moving on to some matters of rugby news now. Kabras Sugar, Top Fry Nakuru, Impala RFC, Mwamba and KCB convincingly won their Kenya Cup rugby matches this afternoon. Impala were playing away to Queens, won 23-22. Nakuru RFC outplayed the visiting Mombasa Sports Club 85-5 in Nakuru, while Mwamba were 43-13 winners over Nondis. KCB blanked Blackbird 60-10, while Homeboys won 25-7 against Western Bulls. In the Ngong Road derby between Impala Saracen captured the attention as Impala carried the day 32-22. Now moving on. 51 drivers will start the final leg of the 2014 KCB National Rally Championship in Naivasha tomorrow. The 51 competing vehicles were today checked and cleared for the session finale, where the winner will take it all. Last month, penultimate round in Kisumu narrowed the championship as last year penultimate. Sorry, I'll take that again. Last year, penultimate round in Kisumu narrowed the championship to a two-man's class in the final race, where pitting defending champion Baldev Chaga and Car Flash Tundo. In this event, if Boldy retires, Flash must finish among the top 5 to take the tie. And if Flash wins, it will be a must-win podium finish to Baldev Chaga.
There's some tricky stages out there. There's a mix of everything. Fast, rocky, twisty. So it'll be interesting for the crews. And if we get some rain, it'll make it even more interesting.
All right, the figure that should shock a nation: 147 people murdered in Al-Shabaab-related attacks just in 2014. The attack in Mandera, we're calling it Mandera Massacre, of course adding 28 to that number. And we've got lots of feedback coming in, lots of very angry feedback. I'll just try and curate some of it. Walter Mwania says, what is NIS doing? Hashtag Mandera Massacre, hashtag Kapedo Massacre, hashtag Lamu Massacre, hashtag Tana River Massacre. And he's tagged Uhuru Kenyatta, William Ruto, and the Inspector General of Police, Kimayo, in that tweet. Gonza Atiani says, the old saying still holds water. Prevention is better than cure. Intelligence, intelligence, intelligence. One more. Atonya Stanley says, why don't we erect a wall on our border with Somalia akin to the Berlin Wall? Very interesting questions. Lots of talk still going on that hashtag. Remember, you can keep talking with us with respect to what's happened in Mandera. That conversation will continue, and it will be part of our agenda tomorrow and in the coming weeks. But for now, I have to say good night. Remember, Yvonne Okwara is back tomorrow with Checkpoint. This is A Point of News. I'm John Alanamu. Have a good night.